Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Down the Tee tennis podcast. We've gone with Down the Tee this week. That's actually a name change. We started off as the First Serve Tennis podcast. Found quite a lot out there already called the First Serve. So we've changed to Down the Tee. But what hasn't changed is I am again joined by Ewan West. How are you doing, Ewan?
I'm good, thanks. I'm glad to be back on, and I think the name change is necessary. But good. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Today we're doing a preview of the 2021 tennis season on the ATP men's singles side. And we're going to start off with our picks for the Grand Slam winners. So go ahead, Ewan. Who's your Australian Open winner?
All right. Well, I've gone with Novak Djokovic. It wasn't an easy choice actually. This one between Djokovic and I was quite tempted by both Thiem and Medvedev for this because I think the gap has closed on hard course between Djokovic and the rest of the serious contenders. Obviously, Thiem and Medvedev, and with the way Nadal's playing on hard course, is strongly in the mix there as well. But I can't go against Djokovic's record at the Australian Open, having never lost when he's got to the semi-finals and finals, 8-0 at both those stages, 8 titles. So yeah, I've stuck with Djokovic there. What do you think?
So this is going to end up really boring because I've gone exactly the same as you with the exact same thought process as you. So I also agree it wasn't actually that easy of a pick. It does look on the surface an easy pick. Oh yeah, Novak Djokovic wins the Australian Open. But how close Team ran him last season in the final, I mean, how well Medvedev's playing at the moment, you do give them a really good chance. And Nadal went far in the Australian last year and he's playing quite well on hard courts at the moment, but just for pretty much the same reasons as you. I'm like, as much as I think he can be challenged in the Australian this year, and I wouldn't be too surprised if someone else won it. If you're picking who you think's going to win it, you have to pick Djokovic because I think he's won the tournament 8 times, 7 out of the last 10 years. So it's hard to predict anyone other than Djokovic for the Australian Open. But we'll move on to the French, and it's going to be pretty much the same, isn't it? With an easy pick.
Yeah, this one was definitely, well, it was probably the easiest pick of the four. Definitely an easier pick than the Australian. I've gone with Nadal, and I mean, just everything we said about Djokovic's record at the Australian, but I mean, several times more with Nadal winning 13 titles. He also has the record of never losing a semi-final or final. So I mean, when he gets to that stage, he just doesn't lose, and he's only played one 5-set match in the semis or finals at the French. So he's never really come close to losing when he gets to the business end. When he's playing at his best, the only time he did was in 2013 against Djokovic in the semi-finals. So yeah, I think with how good Rafa looked just over a month ago at the French Open, what was it, 2 months ago now, he looks as unstoppable as ever. So I can't go against Nadal.
Yeah, and I think Roger's going to... No, I don't think Roger's going to win the French Open, sadly. I agree, Rafa. And, I said people might think I'm a Roger fan there, but I said sadly Roger won't win the French Open. I love watching Nadal on clay. I'm a big fan of all these three guys, and it doesn't upset me that Nadal's, my pick to win the French Open. He's incredible on that surface. No one's come close. No one has ever come close. And even now at his age, he just seems to have a clear advantage over anyone on clay, and especially at Roland Garros, where he just seems to have an even extra level upon what he does, in the Masters. So yeah, I think Rafa Nadal's the obvious pick. We'll move on to Wimbledon, and maybe it might get a little bit less obvious.
Yeah, I'd say less obvious, but for me, this one was slightly easier than the two hardcore slams, and I've gone with Djokovic, just because I think the gap between Djokovic on grass is bigger it's a bigger gap than it is and the rest of the field than it is on hard course. The gap between, say, Djokovic and Thiem and Medvedev, and probably, well, with Nadal it's similar, and Nadal's a strong contender to win it as well. But I think I'm still yet to see the next gen really look at their best and look serious contenders on grass and at Wimbledon. And I think, the last time we had Wimbledon, Djokovic won it without actually playing at his best. So I think I still think Djokovic is going to be the player B at Wimbledon. Federer's an interesting one, definitely. I think this is the slam as it has been for quite some time, where he's going to be having his best chance to win one. But yeah, I think it will be Djokovic.
And we've done the same again. I've also picked Djokovic, and once again, it is for similar reasons. Because although I do feel like the next gen are finally coming into their own a bit and can maybe challenge the big guys, including Nadal and Djokovic, I just think none of them have really had a win that makes you, well, a run at Wimbledon that makes you think, yeah, they could win the tournament. So then if you're counting out the next gen for Wimbledon, you're only really looking at Roger, Roger has a great chance if he comes back fit and firing. I suspect that if he is fit, he'll play quite a reduced calendar next year to just make sure that he is fit for the most important tournaments, the one he really thinks he can win. And Wimbledon's going to be one of those. Obviously, last time we had Wimbledon, Roger ended up with 2 match points on his own serve. A lot of people won't like to be reminded of that, but he did have 2 match points on his own serve, which sadly he threw away. So yeah, Roger does come close. I think Nadal does come close as well at the moment. He's had runs to the semi-finals in the last few years. So he does seem to be back towards his best on grass, not quite the phenom, the young Nadal, but he does have a chance. But yeah, it's difficult. We haven't seen Team really perform on grass, and he has improved on fast courts, so it'll be interesting to see him back out on the grass. If hopefully we do get a full grass season next year, because it's not a long one anyway, so we want a full one. So yeah, Medvedev as well. I think Medvedev seems like he's got a style of play that suits grass, but then his record at Wimbledon doesn't really.
I agree. I think he's probably the best equipped in terms of the tools he's got currently on grass out of the younger guys, because I think obviously he does have a great serve. He's a flatter here than Thiem, and probably than Zverev as well, and he moves extremely well. So I think Medvedev's the best equipped. Last time we saw him at Wimbledon, I think he lost to Goffin in the 4th round in 5 sets. I mean, he wasn't miles away from having a good run there. So I think Medvedev would be the one out of the younger guys who I could expect if it was to be anyone else. But I wouldn't expect them to win it.
Yeah. So 3 slams we've got through so far, and we've picked the same winners for all 3. So we'll see if the US Open is any different. Who's you pick for the US Open?
I'm going with Thiem for the US Open to defend his title. And this one, I think the US Open has been the most open Grand Slam for the last few years, obviously, with Thiem winning it this year. Now, I was pretty close between Thiem, Medvedev, and Djokovic for this. And obviously, Nadal wasn't far behind, but I think on the slightly quicker, low bouncing courts, that is going to favour probably those 3 over Nadal. I mean, just because, well, obviously, we don't know because Nadal didn't play it this year, so he certainly could. He certainly could be the force he has been at the old US Open. But I'm gonna go with Thiem just because of how good he looked at the US Open this year. Even though he didn't go through one of the big 3 or Murray over Wawrinka, someone like that, he was still unbelievable in the tournament. He was exceptional in the semi-finals against Medvedev, and then he somehow found a way to win against Zverev. And I think Thiem, I find it hard to go against Thiem winning a Grand Slam this year. I mean, maybe it's tough to go against Djokovic, but with Djokovic's record at the US Open, it isn't what you'd expect for someone who I think is the greatest hardcourt player of all time. I mean, he's made 8 finals, but I think to have lost 5, it has been a bit of a difficult tournament from obviously this year with what happened with the default with the year before, where he was injured against Wawrinka during his 4th round match, and then the final losses. I think you'll be a bit disappointed not to have 1 or 2 more titles at the US Open, and I think this could be again the slam where someone outside of definitely Djokovic and Nadal could win it, and I think Thiem showed he can do it.
Yeah, and nice to have some variation, because not only have you gone with a different winner, but also I have, and I've gone with a different one to you. One of the guys that you did mention that has a chance, Daniil Medvedev. Obviously, he's been in the US Open final before, a fantastic 5 sets match with Rafa Nadal, and I think if that match happened in 2020 or 2021, a 5 set US Open final between those 2, I think Medvedev would win it. I just think in 2019 Nadal still had that edge, that clear edge over the next gen, especially mentally. You know, having been a champion, having been there before, but also I think physically maybe the gap's widening a bit as well. But not only that, because he didn't have to come through Djokovic in that 2019 run. I think he can challenge Djokovic on the hard courts at the US Open, and it's a difficult one with Team because Team's performed well at the US Open before. Obviously, he's won the tournament this year, so whether I'd back him in a final over Dominic Thiem, it's kind of, I could see that one going either way, but I just decided, I had a feeling when Notime's down, I just decided Daniil Medvedev. I do think he's got a chance at Slam next year, and I think he could win the US Open.
Yeah, I was really close between the two, and I think the only thing I would question with Medvedev is his record in matches when they go 5 sets, where he hasn't won 1 out of 6. But I think he is going to go overcome that at some point. I don't know if that's quite a few of those were slightly before he was the player he is now, and I think physically he has improved a lot. So I would expect him to improve that, but that might be something right at the back end of a Slam that he's going to have to prove he can do. But I think he can now.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting on Medvedev because he's a kind of player. I think the way he plays up until the 5th set, but you'd kind of back in a 5th set if you didn't know his record in a 5th set, because he does always look like he moves well. Like, he does always seem like he must be really physically fit and the kind of player who can outlast you in a match. But it doesn't really happen for him when matches are going to a 5th set at the moment. So it is interesting, his record in that regard. But I do think he's equipped as a player to go and win those kind of grueling matches. So I don't know what it is that has been stopping him in the past, but I do think he will get over that in his career. He'll outgrow that, and I think maybe if we saw him in a 5th set now, he'd show that he already has outgrown that. But yeah, so that's the Slam winners. We'll move on now to who is your pick to end the year as world number 1, and who have you got down?
I've gone with Djokovic to do it for the 2nd year in a row. I just think, yeah, it's obviously, I think it'll be very close between Djokovic and Nadal when we get a full season. This year, he did it fairly comfortably. I mean, Nadal wasn't far off, but I think when you get a full season, you're going to get the 2 clay court Masters 1000s and Barcelona, where Nadal takes a huge amount of points. But Djokovic generally has a great record at all the Masters series events, and picking him to win 2 slams, I think he'll still be going far in the other 2 as well. So yeah, I think Djokovic is going to take the most points again.
Yeah, and once again, I've agreed with you there. I've also got down Djokovic, and I added a little note that I think he might not even lose the number 1 spot between now and year end next year. Would that take him past Federer's consecutive? Well,
it would. Yeah.
One.
Yeah, that would give him the week's number 1 record. I think already as it stands right now, even if he doesn't win another match until March, he keeps it. So, and yeah, I think I agree with you. I could see him probably keeping it for the whole year. And I think that would definitely take him well past the record. I'm not sure exactly at what point he'll go past it, but yeah, I think he's probably going to be well ahead of that by the end of the year.
Yeah, and like, just to justify my pick a bit more, say why I agreed with you on that one. I've predicted him to win 2 out of 4 of the slams, and that's obviously big points. And like you say, his record in other big tournaments, is he the only player with a career Golden Masters to have won every Masters?
He is, yeah. And when he won the Cincinnati event this year, he did it he's won each Masters now twice, at least twice each. So I mean, that's obviously an incredible record. And yeah, the ATP Finals, he hasn't won it in 5 years, but you could almost say a new venue now in Turin. You feel he's due to win it, given how great an indoor hardcourt player he is. But he's always there or thereabouts. So I mean, I just think with the amount of points he picks up throughout the year, and particularly at the slams, it's tough for anyone to catch him. And I think Team, I was thinking Team could maybe close the gap again slightly because he's improving all the time. But I think it might be a bit too early still for Team to get to number 1.
Yeah, I agree with that. So just moving on, the rest of your top 8 then. So Djokovic fills both of our number 1 spots, but who else have you got as the 8 players that, barring any withdrawals, will qualify for the ATP finals next year?
Yeah, well, I've actually gone with the same top 8 that finished in the top 8 this year, but obviously Schwartzman qualified in at number 9 because Federer didn't play, so I've gone with Nadal, Thiem, Medvedev, Federer, Tsitsipas, Zverev, and Rublev, and that's because I think certainly the first 4, I think that will be the first, will continue to be the first 4, or certainly will go no lower than 5, depending on what sort of year Federer has. I think Federer, it is a bit of an unknown given how long he's been out, but I think what we did see from him before, when he last played, he reached the semi-finals of the Australian Open, still looked really good. He still had a good year before that in 2019, so I haven't seen anything to suggest that Federer is going to drop outside the top 8, and I don't think he will. And I think Tsitsipas and Zverev have definitely shown that they've established themselves as top 8 players. I wouldn't expect them to drop out. And Rublev, I think, again, I would have at the bottom end of that, but he had such a good year. I'm not sure if I've seen enough from anyone to go past him, because I think Rublev can actually still gain a lot of points where he hasn't had the big results at the big events yet, at the Masters Series and at the Slams. He hasn't gone past the quarterfinal. At the Slams, obviously, he had solid results, 2 quarterfinals and a 4th round, but at the Masters Series, I think he's only reached 1 quarterfinal. He had an early exit in Paris and in Rome, I think. So I think he's actually got room to improve in that sense at the big events. So yeah, there's a couple of guys I had knocking on the door. Like Sinner, I think is going to rise a lot, but I think it might just be slightly too early for him to break into that top 10. I think he'd be close. Raonic, if he could stay fit, I think would have a chance, but I still wouldn't quite have him getting into the top 8. And I think Monfils, with the form he showed last year, was definitely a top 8 player, but I think he's struggled without the fans since the tour's return, and that's probably going to continue to be the case. I think he really does need the crowd to play his best tennis. The only other one was Shapovalov, who I just think he's not quite as consistent as the guys at the bottom end of that top 8 in Tsitsipas, Zverev, and Rublev. Yeah, but I think, again, he might be there or thereabouts, but not quite in.
Right. I think you can't really disagree with any of your picks there, really. But I think I've just gone a little bit edgy with mine. So I've started pretty normal, obviously behind Djokovic. I've got Nadal, Medvedev, Dominic Thiem. In 5th, I've got Stefano Tsitsipas. And then in 6th, I've gone with Denis Shapovalov, which I think I might have just done that to try and redeem last week's pronunciation of his name. But no, I think he's got a lot of talent in him. He's a left-hander, really interesting player, and I do think maybe he could start to string some good tournaments, some good runs together, earning big points. I don't feel solid on that pick. I don't think he's definitely going to be a top 8 player next year, but I do think he's got a chance. In 7th, I've gone Roger Federer, because I think he will. I do feel like he will probably play quite a reduced calendar. So I'm not sure if he'll play all the slams. He has skipped a French Open before, although in 2019 he did play quite a full clay court swing, didn't he? And was playing quite well on clay. So maybe there's a little bit of a romantic in Federer that thinks, if the chips fall right, I could actually come away with a second French Open title from my career. But if I had to guess, I do think he might skip most of the clay swing next year as he looks to manage his fitness to give him the best chance at Wimbledon and the Australian Open and the US Open, which he's got much better chances at. So, but then I'd say if he does play Wimbledon, even if he's not particularly fit and firing, he still makes at least a quarterfinal, and that's good points. I think he makes at least a 4th round of the Australian, and probably the same for the US Open as well. So I've put Federer in 7th just because I do think he will have tournaments where he picks up quite big points, but then he'll skip quite a lot of the calendar. And then in 8th, I've gone with Milos Raonic because he's like I say, I'm quite encouraged with how he's played this year after a couple of years where he was struggling with injury that I thought he might be finished as a top tennis player. But he's had some really good runs this year, so I do think if he can stay fit and that continues, he can be a top 8 player next year for definite. Anything that sticks out to you there as particularly wild?
Wild. No, I think, like I said, like I mentioned before, I think Raonic is definitely going to be close if he can stay fit. It's just a question of he always seems to break down at some point. Obviously, I hope he doesn't. Because I think, like I say, I wouldn't go against that. I think he'll definitely be either in or around the top 10 if he can play a pretty full year without missing the parts of the year where he does really enjoy the hardcore swings and the grass court season. So I think if he can play the majority of that, he'll be close. And Shapovalov at 6, I think he's definitely capable. It's just he showed some great signs at the US Open, getting to the quarterfinals, and then Rome getting to the semifinals. He was brilliant, but then he had quite a disappointing end to the year. But I think it's just a question of consistency, and I think again he'll be close. But yeah, I think it might still be a bit early, but. And I agree. I think you make a really good point on Federer playing a reduced schedule. I guess it does depend how much, if all, of the clay court season he plays in. But I think where he always, as you say, he always seems to get great points at Wimbledon, and he'll probably go far in the 2 hardcourt slams. And then the two events, he seems to get pretty much a guaranteed 1,000 points every year from Halle and Basel by winning those 2 ATP 500s. So I think Federer will still be in the top 8, even with a reduced calendar.
Yeah, and just moving on, quite an interesting question, because it's it's often not a player that's been one of the best players that year. Well, they'll have had to play well, but not they may not have even had to win a slam as it was this year. So Andrei Rublev walked away with the most ATP titles this year, winning 5, all of them 250s or 500s. So thinking down that kind of route, who do you think walks away with the most titles next year? Obviously with a full calendar as well, so that changes things.
Yeah. I'll probably go with Djokovic on this one, because I think usually, well, as we say, we predict him to win 2 slams, and then you think if we have a full season, which is obviously a big if, but there's 9 Masters Series events, 6 on hard courts, you'd expect them to win at least 2 of those, maybe 3. Sometimes he wins one on clay as well, and then you've got potentially the 500 in Dubai, where he has quite a good record. Depends if we're going to have a pre-Australian Open warm up. Obviously, that's in doubt at the moment, but he does have a good record in Doha, the 250, and then potentially at the end of the year if he's going to play something like Vienna again. But I'd probably go with Djokovic. I mean, Nadal could be close on this one, because if he does a clean sweep of the clay court season plus a couple outside of that, but I'll probably just go with Djokovic.
Yeah, I said obviously a full calendar there. We don't know that. That's just our assumption. That's what the plan is, but we never know what's gonna happen between now and the end of next year. Whether that calendar is going to get chunks taken out of it. But for now, I think I'd probably agree with you with Djokovic, because 2 slams, he'll pick up a couple of Masters, at least a couple of Masters, maybe even like 4. I mean, Nadal he's obviously got the French Open, and you'd probably make him a favourite for the clay Masters, Rome, Madrid, and Monte Carlo if he plays them all. So he's in with a shout that I would probably agree. Just for the mix of services, the amount of tournaments he'll play, it's probably Djokovic who's your favourite there. Thinking down the route, so it might be someone who picks up quite a lot of 250s and 500s. If I've predicted Chapo for number 6 in the rankings, then I might put him in the mix as well, from winning a good few 250s and 500s. But moving on from that, who do you think that we probably haven't mentioned so far, or might have come up in your discussions around the top 8, who you're predicting might have a good year next year. Maybe just a big rise in the rankings or to get towards the top 10 or so. Something like that. Just a surprise package.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced on this one, but I think Borna Coric we might see him. He's currently sitting at 24 in the rankings, and we've seen him as high as 12. I think he showed signs towards the end of the year that he was starting to get towards some of his best tennis again after he'd struggled. I think after a great season in 2018, he hadn't backed it up, partially due to injuries and I think a loss of confidence. But he went and got to his first quarterfinal at a Grand Slam at the US Open, and he lost to Zverev in a match where you'd probably be disappointed to have lost from a center breakup. But yeah, obviously had that amazing win from, I think, saving 6 match points to beat Tsitsipas. And then he went and got to the final of St. Petersburg, where he lost a high quality match to Rublev, which was upgraded to a 500 this year. So I think Coric showed some good signs, and I could see him getting back around number 10 in the rankings from what we've seen from it towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that is a good shout. He has had an impressive year, and he is a player that seems to have a lot of talent. For mine, I've gone with someone who I'm not really predicting to get towards the top 10, but maybe to break around the 15 mark. And I don't know if it's a word we mentioned a lot last time out, recency bias, that's made me go down this line of thinking, but I've just noted down the name Lorenzo Senegal. But 25 years old, he's he's probably reaching what you'd say are the prime years of his career. And he's 33 in the rankings currently, which is just one place below his career best, which he achieved very recently at 32. And yeah, he seems like he's had to probably break into the pro tennis the hard way. So he only played in his first slam match in 2018, and he was already 22 years old at that point. And you're thinking now, there's a lot of players that play their first slam matches much younger than that in the teenagers. He's a clay court specialist. He's reached the fourth round of Roland Garros this year. Obviously, there was quite a reduced draw at both the slams that ended up being played after lockdown, but it was still a strong enough draw to say that the fourth round is really impressive. And then obviously that big match, that big win against Djokovic in Vienna, wasn't it, the 500? And Djokovic's level was quite low for a player that usually stays at such a high standard consistently. But I think it was Senegal that forced it to be that low. Maybe he underestimated Lorenzo going into the match, and when he found himself in a bit of a fight, maybe his level just dropped a bit. So I don't know. I don't think you can really use a low Djokovic, Djokovic at a low standard for himself as something to kind of downplay Senegal's achievement in beating Djokovic and getting to the final in Vienna, because I do think it was Senegal that did force Djokovic to sort of go within himself and not play at his usual standard. And also, even though he's a clay court specialist, his one main tour title actually came in 2019 at Antalya on the grass. So maybe maybe we don't give him enough credit for being good across multiple surfaces. Maybe he is a bit of an all court player. So I'm quite intrigued to see what comes from him, because he's not a player that maybe we've thought about as someone who belongs in the top 20 or so before, but I think he can definitely break top 20 this next year based on what we've seen from him, and maybe even get to around the 15 mark or so. Just what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think that's quite a good shout, and I agree with you what you said about the win against Djokovic in Vienna. Like, obviously, I saw a lot of it being put down to Djokovic's poor level, and yeah, there's no question he wasn't at his best, but still to beat him by the scoreline he did, which I think was 6-2, 6-1. I mean, it's so rare you see anyone do that to Djokovic, and I mean, it was a brilliant performance by Senegal. There's no question. It was incredible serving and aggressive baseline play, and as you said, I think he's got a good game for all surfaces, and he backed that win up by, that was the quarterfinals. He won then his semi-final against Dan Evans impressively in straight sets. So that was a great result for him. He's got a title under his belt, and I think he hasn't been noticed that much, but I think he could definitely steadily improve, and he could definitely be in the top 20.
Yeah. So down a similar route of questioning, sort of your younger players. So ones we've already seen kind of break through are players like Felix Auger-Aliassime, Yannick Sinner had a good year this year. Just what are your thoughts on those kind of players? Are they going to go up another level next year? And also, what other young talents are you looking out for next year?
Yeah, well, I think Sinner definitely will. I think was he at, I think 37 in the rankings now. I think as I think I mentioned before, I think he'll be close to the top 10, but definitely inside the top 20. I'd be very surprised if he isn't, because I think he's just made great strides at a sort of a consistent rate. Well, probably better than consistent. And I think he's going to continue to do that. I think Auger-Aliassime, I think he'll improve, but I don't think it'll be a massive improvement, because I still think he does have work to do in terms of shot selection. There's some matches I've just watched where he just can't put enough balls in court. He just makes too many unforced errors, and I think he probably just needs to rein the margins in a bit, and that might just take some time to do. Or if he's going to continue with the ultra aggressive approach, it's going to take time for it to start working better than it is. So I think maybe a slight rise from Felix, but he does still have that big hurdle to overcome with the losing all 6 finals he's reached. I mean, it's great to get to the finals, but that's probably something he's going to have to get over. So I think it might be a bit of a slower year for him. And I think in terms of other players, as I mentioned in the last episode, Carlos Alcaraz, who's currently at 140 in the world, I would expect him to definitely get inside the top 100 at least, probably go higher. And what we've mainly seen from him is fantastic results on the clay courts, winning challenger titles. And we did see him when he played an ATP event at the 500 in Rio, get a great win over Ramos Vinolas, and nearly backed up against Federico Coria in the next round. So I think even at just 17, we're going to see him continue to make strides and see him in a lot more tour-level events.
Yeah, it feels like post-lockdown this year was kind of maybe a period where we did start to see a few young talents get some main tour matches under the belt, which might be due to reduced draws, that more kind of that opened up more wildcard spots maybe to younger talents. Because there was the Italian player Lorenzo Musetti who got his first main tour win against Stan Wawrinka, didn't he? So he's another interesting one to look out for. You've mentioned a few there, but one player that did pop up last week that wasn't even on my radar at all, and I don't know much about him, was an Argentinian player called Thiago Tiran, who reached his first challenger final last week in Lima in Peru. Apparently, he won the French Open juniors doubles, so some record pedigree at junior level. But it's weird. I feel like sometimes it's quite hard to keep up with what's going on in maybe the ITF tours, the junior tours, even challengers. There seems to be a lot happening all the time that's hard to keep up with. So it is hard to keep a track of what young talents there are below main tour level. So I think it is much easier to look at the players that have already played at main tour level, like Seyboth Wild, Felix Auger-Aliassime, and Yannick Sinner. I think Sinner especially, he's gonna have another big rise at the rankings next year. So interested to see what happens there. But we'll wrap this all up with just turning his attention to British tennis. What are your hopes for British players next year? Who do you think is going to be the British number one?
I'll probably go with Dan Evans to be British and number one again. Just because I think we see him at 32 in the rankings at the moment, and he had a very good year, reaching 2 semi-finals. The first one in Dubai, the second one in Antwerp towards the end of the year, where he had match points against Humbert and lost. But I think he's had very good results at that type of event. But I still think there's more to come from him. A bit like we mentioned with Rublev earlier, but to a lesser extent at the bigger events. I think he can still definitely improve his results at the Masters Series and the Grand Slams. Especially we're going to see Wimbledon hopefully back next year, where you'd expect Evans to do quite well, and the grass court season as a whole, given his aggressive game style, you'd expect him to do well on the quicker courts. So I think Evans will still be in and around that 30 mark, possibly slightly higher. And yeah, I think he would just be slightly ahead of Edmund, who's an interesting one because he had a good start of the year winning the New York Open. And then I think he got the quarterfinals in Acapulco, and he did okay at the US Open when came back beating Bublik in the first round before he played quite well against Djokovic before losing in 4 sets. But then he ended the year with 5 straight losses. So I think there's just been inconsistencies from Edmund. I would expect him to be higher than his current ranking of 48. I mean, he's been up as high as 14 when he reached the Australian Open semis 2 years ago. But I would expect him just to be slightly behind Evans, and I think Murray could get back into the top 30 if he can be free of injury setbacks, but that is a big if. So I would, just given what's gone on, it would be hard to see him going a full year without getting any injuries. We really hope that does happen, but yeah, I think definitely he could get back into the top 50 at least, and maybe top 30, possibly even top 20 if he does have an injury for a year. But I'd like to see Murray try and be a bit more aggressive and shorten points and play a less physical style. I think that'll probably help him during matches and also in recovery for the next match. Yeah,
I've gone with Kyle Edmund as my year-end British number 1, and I think the reason is I rate Dan Evans highly. I really like his game, and I do think this year there was no luck in his rise in the rankings this year. It's all due to hard work and his ability. But I still feel like Kyle Edmund has a higher ceiling as a player than Dan Evans does. I think just that forehand, especially, when that's firing, it's one of the best on the tour. I think I'm not like overestimating him there. I think his forehand is genuinely up there. And I think with a weapon like that, he can go on and, really start to cause problems for some big players. And I don't know what it is with him. Like he's threatened to in the past. Obviously, that Australian Open run to the semi-final really felt like it was a big kind of watershed moment for him as a player, where it's like, okay, he's arrived. He's gonna have other good runs from here. I don't think we ever expected him to be a slam winner, but I kind of had hopes that he'd be someone who would pop up quite often late into slams, like your 4th rounds, your quarterfinals. So yeah, I don't know what it is with him that's caused the kind of indifferent results and the drop in the rankings over the last couple of years. But I still think there's a lot of talent there that is, has a chance to show again, hopefully. So I do think Kyle Edmund, hopefully, this year can reclaim British number 1, not because I want it to be taken off Dan Evans, but because I do feel like Kyle Edmund has more to offer. He's younger than Dan. He's got more years competing towards the top if he does manage to get towards the top again. I also think with Dan Evans, I know he did have a couple of good runs post-lockdown, so semi-finals of Vienna and Antwerp, but
yeah.
I do feel like lockdown came at a really awful time for him. He was in incredible form. He'd just been at a semi-final in Dubai, and then all of a sudden tennis is off. Only thing he's had is training at the National Tennis Centre, the Battle of the Brits tournaments, where obviously he's tested against a limited pool of players. And then after that, he came through with a few kind of early exits. I mean, he lost to Raonic in the second round of Cincinnati. You can't really hold that against him. We all know what Raonic is capable of, but he's had a few second round and first round exits of tournaments, and it just does feel like maybe his momentum was hurt a bit. He did manage to pick it back up towards the end of the year, but I do think he did struggle for momentum a little bit after lockdown, and I think hopefully that doesn't carry on into next year, but it might do. I don't have much hope for Murray climbing the rankings massively. I think also he'll be on a very limited calendar, and if so, I just maybe can get to a few second rounds, third rounds in big tournaments in the slams, and maybe a few maybe third rounds of Masters and stuff. But I'm not sure if he's going to score big enough points to return to being British number 1. I'd say I mean, top 80 mark would be quite a good year for Murray, to be honest. So that's just my thoughts. But as for British breakout stars, we don't really have a Carlos Alcaraz, do we? I think the closest thing we do have is maybe a Jack Draper. So there's a few other lads that are part of the mix, other young lads like Matasevic, Paul Jubb. So just what are your thoughts on those players? Do you think any of them could start working their way towards playing more main tour matches next year or doing well in challenges?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on Draper. Draper's definitely the closest half to that type of talent, and I think he is really a promising young talent. He's still just 18, although I think he turns 19 this month. But yeah, you saw him win the ITF event in Sunderland earlier in the year, and he's had success at that level. He's already won matches in challenges, and I think I would expect him to continue to climb. And at the rate he has improved at, I think with a full year, there's a chance he could get into the top 200, which, I mean, to go over 100 places would be a great year, possibly even more, but I think we'll definitely start to see him play a lot more on the Challenger Tour, continue to improve. And as for the other guys, I think it might, like Paul Jubb and Matasevic, you mentioned, it might take a bit longer, and I think I would expect Draper to have higher potential than those guys, but I would expect them to climb a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that neither of us even spoke about Cam Norrie, I don't think, as far as one of the British number. But I'd still put him below Edmund and Evans, to be honest. So I do like Cam, but I do think his game is maybe a bit more limited than those two. With Draper, he's another one that maybe the lockdown came at a bad time because he had just reached a career high, which I think was 286 or 288. And he was actually, he reckons, about to break in the Potchefstroom Challenger second round, which he'd mainly been playing ITF tournaments before that. So to get through a couple of rounds at a Challenger would have been quite big for him and moved him up even higher. So to be kind of mid-match and then all of a sudden all tennis is off, it was another real momentum killer. I think we joke about my love for Paul Jubb sometimes. He's a Yorkshire lad. He's actually from more your neck of the woods, isn't he? You was born in Hull, weren't you?
Yeah, he's from
Yeah, and he played Ilkley in 2019, the Grass Court Challenger, part of the build up to Wimbledon, and he got to the third round of Ilkley, so picked up 2 wins there. From that, he got through the qualifying draw at Eastbourne and played his first main tour match there. And then he was given a Wimbledon wildcard as well, and he came up against João Sousa of Portugal, and who was probably about 70 odd in the rankings at the time, around that mark, and managed to take a set off him. He did also lose a set 6 love. But then he returned to playing university tennis. He was an NCAA men's singles champion in 2019. Which is a huge tournament to win. I think it's as big as you can win in American university tennis. So 2019 seemed like a big year for him, but not much has happened for him in 2020. I mean, not much has happened for anyone in 2020, but you look at Draper pre-lockdown, he was having good runs in ITF tournaments. So it's a bit of a strange one, his Jubb, but I think he's a talented player. I like him. He was a Yorkshire lad that had a good run in the only professional tennis tournament based in Yorkshire, so he immediately got me on his side then. So I would like to see him move up the rankings. There's also Jay Clark, another young lad who's I think he's higher than Draper and Jubb in the rankings. Do you just want to touch on him for a second?
Yes, yeah. I mean, Jay Clark has had some decent results at the challenges. He's already played quite a lot more than the other players we've just mentioned on the challenges. He's slightly older, but yeah, he's had some pretty solid results already, and I think he's definitely still got some room to grow, and to possibly, I wouldn't put it past him to get close, possibly the top 100, certainly the top 150. Yeah.
I think as far as young British tennis talent goes, I think Jay Clark's currently ahead in the rankings. He's also ahead in age as well, as you've mentioned. But I think hopefully this is going to be a year where Draper moves up the rankings because he's a Wimbledon boys singles junior finalist, isn't he? So I think he's the closest we have got to a Carlos Alcaraz, and I think 2021 is going to be an important year for him. But I think that's all the bases we wanted to cover for today, isn't it? I've just realised that we never touched on the Olympic singles champion, which is something that I wanted to mention.
Okay, should we do that?
Andy Murray, third time in a row.
That would be quite something. I think, but yeah, I think you'd be happy probably just to play. It'd be interesting to see if he plays the doubles as well. With Jamie Murray, that would be quite interesting. But yeah, I probably wouldn't pick him to win a third. But yeah, I'll possibly go with Djokovic to win his first Olympic gold in singles. Well, his first Olympic gold. Yeah.
And that'd make him beat Rafa Nadal to the record of every big title, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because he's already got the ATP finals. It's just the Olympic gold that's missing for him.
Yeah.
It's the first since Andre Agassi to do it. So yeah, Djokovic to complete the set of career big titles in 2021. I think we'll leave you with that. So it's been nice to do this again. Like I said, last time we were unsure about how often we wanted to do it, but I think now we are. We have decided we do want to establish this as a regular thing. So any feedback would be brilliant. Thank you for listening, and goodbye
for now.